Good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking time out of your valuable day and coming here today. This morning, Dr. Len gave us a lot of wonderful information and gave us a lot of understanding about our cells and how they can rust. Well, this afternoon we're going to talk about the autoimmune system and how it functions. But thank you so much for coming here. Wait a minute, I need to say my FDA prayer. This presentation is designed for doctors and healthcare practitioners. The information provided is an introduction to this topic. This is not intended to be a complete discussion on this topic. The FDA has not approved this information, and it's recommended that you check your local, state, federal, and governing laws and regulations and the restriction of use of any of the information contained herein. The views, opinions, and expressed views of the presenter are not necessarily the views of Nutritional Frontiers or any of its employees or representatives. Amen. This is important. Do you know that this is now a fact that the FDA has decided, now this is 2 years already in effect, that the FDA has decided that they will sit in on nutritional conferences and find out who is presenting and absolutely prosecute from that point. This is for real. This is not for fun. So I do this to protect myself. But how do we protect ourselves? What Dr. Weiner was telling you about immunizations is absolutely critical. Don't stand back and say, oh, isn't that a shame? No, we don't want to do that. But not do anything? How can you not be an activist? You have to realize that there's something that's happening. I think I said, how many of you were here in October? Poor souls, they got to hear it again. Okay. Anyway, so one of the things I think that I told you was about a family that lived in Johnstown, moved to Texas, Houston, Texas, and they had a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old child. The 4-year-old they wanted to enlist into a very specific private school. They went to the pediatrician and they went to find out if they could have the thing written so that they would not need to get immunizations. And the pediatrician said, nope, don't believe in that. You must do it. The mother pleaded. The mother said, I've been doing homeopathic remedies, and I believe my child is immunized. And the pediatrician absolutely burst out laughing. Said, that's baloney. I don't believe that. I'll prove to you that your child is not immunized. And so the pediatrician had blood drawn on this 4-year-old. That's a horrible thing to do to a 4-year-old. And so the blood was drawn. The titers were looked, and she signed the paper because the child was immunized. There was nothing that that child did not have an immunity against. So it can be done. Don't let anybody intimidate you into thinking that you must do these things. Know that there is another way. There really is. Okay, so as we talk about one other thing I wanted to say, just an affirmation to what Dr. Len was saying. This is a book that is called Sitting Kills, Moving Heals. If you aren't using this in your chiropractic office, you should be. This was a Joan Vernikos, Vernikos. Obviously, I'm not Italian, so I can't pronounce some of these names. But anyway, this is a gal she was the director of NASA's Life Sciences Division. And she taught how if you sit, and so I am never offended if during one of my talks you want to get up and stand along the side of the wall, you surely can. Do what Dr. Len told you, stand up against the wall, because this is, your chair is slowly killing you, but exercise alone isn't the answer. Easy, everyday, all-day movement. In other words, telling you that if you sit in a chair at an office desk, make sure that you get up at least every 15 minutes and move. Very important. Write it down, read it, do it. Okay, so when we go on to the other thing that I mentioned was about the far infrared saunas, because I believe in a far infrared sauna, but I'm very picky as to what kind I would use. Because I've met a man, he happens to be president of my foundation, Health by Choice Education and Research. His name is Patrick Kirkham. And if you go to naturalalliance.org, you can read about this man, but he has done a research study of many types of far infrared saunas and is able to tell you, and he is not biased as to a certain brand name that he would sell, but rather the understanding that there is a difference in them. Remember, Sherry Rogers. Sherry Rogers is the medical doctor from New York who has actually done the research to show you that she wrote Detoxify or Die, a book that is, yes, it's years old, but it's a book that still tells you that for the most sensitive person, you are better off doing far infrared sauna, because some people are so sick that they can't start out with a detoxifying program, okay? And so they have to start out with 5 minutes in the far infrared sauna. Then they start out with 10 minutes. In other words, they are so sick and their body is so sensitive that they need to start very slowly. But anyway, Patrick will help you to understand, not selling you anything, telling you where you can go and that type of thing to get a good one. Okay, so then let's go on to show you the father of immunology. The father of immunology rejected the idea of autoimmune disease, and we want to go into this whole idea of, he called the concept of autoimmunity horror autointoxicus. And anyway, it is something that, I learned it, autoimmune disease was denied, so that, in other words, he actually said this old term that predicted the occurrence of diseases in which the rules guaranteeing self-tolerance are broken. In other words, immunological tolerance is natural or self-tolerance. This is a failure of a good thing, of the body being able to go and attack the body's own proteins and other antigens. If the immune system should respond to self, an autoimmune disease may result. Well, the big thing is, he said it would be purposeless, the thing of formation of autoimmune, because we need a new understanding. And so today, one of the big things that I want to show you is that a lot of my material came from this book. It's called Autoimmune, the Cause and the Cure. I was very impressed. This is not written by a doctor. This is written by a mother and a daughter. Well, first of all, you have to understand, I have a daughter, Henrietta, and she puts the slides together for me. I say this, I want this, and then, no, I don't like that, I want this. So yes, I make her nuts, but she does it anyway for me. And the thing is, this book is a story of a woman, and I have not seen in a very long time a book that documents so much research. Probably more than 2/3 of the book is clips of research that is telling you where she's gotten her information from. And the nutshell is, what do you need, Jamie? Oh, okay. The nutshell is that she is telling you that this can be changed just by food and how you can change your diet. A big, big factor, a very big factor. So you need to know how you can go and do that kind of thing. So that Autoimmune, the Cause and Cure, yes, it's on the book list. I got you a list. This time, all the book titles are written down, or most of them. I think I grabbed a couple more beyond that. But anyway, I tried to give you a book list so that you are able to know what kind of books I'm referring to. And then the second book that I would say today, there's really only 2 books that I would tell you, and I do not know how to say this, your doctor's name. Dr. Junger, Junger is his last name, Clean Gut. Have any of you read this book? Okay, because this is an awesome, awesome book. This medical doctor is telling you what happened to him with his gut and how he had to get it repaired and restored, and it certainly is through diet. Well, anyway, this mother spent 10 years back on Autoimmune, the Cause and the Cure. She spent 10 years searching through doctors of every kind and description, not just through medicine, but she went through the whole medical paradigm first. And she was able to document that this is not the answer. She went through the drugs many different ways, and that was not the answer. So anyway, those are the 2 keys that would tell us, because all truth passes through 3 stages. It's ridiculed first. I came to Western Pennsylvania in 1985, to Bedford County, that is, not Pittsburgh. And in 1986, almost through 1986, the local council of churches had a meeting of all the heads of the churches because they were sure that I was a witch, because I did iridology and I did sclerology, And we have a licensed lab, and I do a urine and saliva screening that's designed by Dr. Carrie Reams. And I certainly wasn't following tradition medicine. Well, I don't call it tradition medicine. That's allopathic medicine. We are tradition. We are what is tradition, what should be looked at as tradition. This is really important. Well, anyway, I didn't do anything about it at that time because I thought, you know what? I believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that the truth will prevail. And that's exactly what has happened. Truth prevails. I may have been born and raised as a Mennonite little girl and did all kinds of things, and then I decided that I needed to change who I was, not because those things weren't good, but because it was where I was at in my life. But the thing is, as we learn, it's ridiculed and then it's violently opposed, and then it's accepted as being self-evident. Isn't it interesting that this morning's newspaper, did any of you guys see the U.S. News and World Report today that shows that McDonald's has gotten rid of all the antibiotic-ridden chicken? Right. My gosh, the world can change. Do you realize that if McDonald's decides to get rid of antibiotic chicken, we can go on to the next step? The next step, of course, is what do you feed your chickens if you don't feed them antibiotics? Because many times people, there's people who are very allergic to eggs, and they're not really allergic to eggs. They're allergic to what the chicken was fed. Because people that have chickens in their backyard and they go and buy, I went and bought some organic feed for my chicken. What's in the organic feed? What makes cheap protein? Soy. You don't want soy? You don't want the issue with soy? Then don't eat that kind of chicken. Yes, you can eat chicken. Yes, you can have eggs. But get chickens that are scratching in the grass. Get chickens that are eating the grains that are a whole grain that is not a hybrid grain. But anyway, be aware of, because at our place we sell eggs and we sell chicken and that type of thing, but they are eggs that have not been, they're soy-free eggs. That's a big difference, and there's a big difference in the taste. Be aware of it. Okay, so Google search. Isn't that interesting that in 2003, there was, if you went to Google search for autoimmune, in 2003 you found 500,000 results when you did a Google search. In 2012, you saw 11 million results. So in other words, if the Google search is showing you that great of a change in what is happening with autoimmune, it literally covers everything. But the thing is, too many times people are given the information that you can't go and you can't heal from autoimmune, you can't get rid of this. But that's not true. We know differently. What makes the autoimmune disease so different is that according to Johns Hopkins, unlike other diseases, it will show up anywhere in the body. So, who gets to treat autoimmune diseases? According to Johns Hopkins, almost every doctor out there has the possibility of seeing a patient with an autoimmune disease. And the lasting effects, because there's no accepted cure in medicine, each patient is expected to experience a lifetime of suffering. I believe there's a cure. I believe that every symptom of autoimmune disease can actually be explained and traced back to its origin, which means that there is a dietary method to reverse this. The book that I'm using is going to help us in seeing this and taking us on to another level. So, autoimmune disease is very common and growing in numbers every year, all the time. And so that one of probably the biggest things, there's so many different things. I wanted to say that Hashimoto's is something that is becoming so much more common. But you know what? There's so many things are. When when Dr. Len mentioned earlier about the Nightshade Foods, remember that research was done years ago at Rutgers University by a horticulturist. And this horticulturist, they found it out by accident. They threw the vegetables and the fruits over the fence to the animals to eat. And over a period of months, these big animals, cows, steers, they actually got such swollen joints that they couldn't move, they couldn't stand up. And so they stopped feeding them this. And there was PPET, remember? Peppers, potatoes, eggplant, and tomatoes, and tobacco. Okay? But those were the nightshade foods, and they found out that this actually created an inflammation in the body. Well, not only that, you go to the dentist and you have a shot of Novocaine. Solanine is the ingredient in Novocaine. Some people go to the dentist and in a matter of 24 hours, they are arthritic. Why? Because their body was sensitive to the Novocaine. There are other things that a dentist can use. And by the way, make sure you have the website for the biological dentist. International Association of Biological Dentistry and Medicine, IAO, International, it's just the initials, .org. International Association of Biological Medicine and Dentistry, D, okay? But anyway, so that you can go and look for a dentist in your area that is biologically trained, because there is a difference. There are holistic dentists out there, and remember, our dear friend who just passed on, who was the one who back in the, 70s, he was the one who went and showed how a root canal actually was related to corresponded to the part of the body that was actually sick. And so he actually went and proved this by taking out a tooth. And that's why they went and took his dental license for a time, because they said, and then they gave it back to him because he really didn't hurt anybody. They got well. Imagine that. But anyway, because the root canal is something that when I heard, I'm sorry, his name doesn't come right now, but he was a medical doctor from... Are you talking about George Miney, or are you talking about Hal Huggins? But I'm talking before Hal Huggins from Germany. The doctor, it's a 4-letter name. But anyway, he spoke in Los Angeles at a cancer conference back in the 70s, and he took us into a room and he asked us, do we know what a root canal does? And everybody just sat there quiet. He said, don't you know what a root canal does? A root canal stinks because it's a dead tooth. You have a dead thing in a living body. How can you let that be there? Well, you certainly got my attention. In Germany, this man, I apologize that I can't say his name at the moment, but anyway, this man went in Germany. He was given a clinic where people were told they only had a month left to live. And so what he did was, he went and took out their teeth. He said, you only have a month to live? So what? We're just going to get rid of. We're going to get rid of all the metal fillings, but we're going to get rid of root canals. Do you know that over 80% of the people survived and lived for many, many years? Because people do not pay attention enough to teeth and the health of your teeth, because it is that critical. Had a man in my office yesterday morning. He said, well, I haven't felt well. It was my first time to see him. I haven't felt well for about 3 years. And I said, but I observed that you have a number of metal fillings in your mouth. Oh, yes, they've been there for many years. And I said, do you know that that upsets the electrical system in your body? Do you know that you can take an amp meter that has the 2 prongs? You take the amp meter and you go and put it against a metal. It'll be wet with saliva, a silver filling in your mouth. Remember, it has 5 different metals in it. And you put that amp meter against that tooth, it can register up to a 1/2 amp of current. Your body is electrical. That's the way God made you. You have a positive and a negative side to your body. But you need to realize that these things come into the body and we need to get that rid of. If this man wants to get well, I told him the first number 1 thing on his list is go find a biological dentist and get those teeth fixed. Because we can't go and move the poisons out of the body because they are, and when a metal filling wears down and the dentist said, well, I need to replace it, what are you doing? You are actually turning around and taking that and putting it into the brain because that's where it goes. So yes, mercury can be measured. Joseph Issels, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Weiner. I was speaking of Dr. Joseph Issels, I-S-S-E-L-S. He was, I met him, he was in his 90s when he moved on, but I met him first in Los Angeles at that cancer conference. and we had encounters numerous times after that. Thank you so much. Okay, so when we look at the dimensions of the problem of the autoimmune, how it affects 50 million Americans, according to the American Autoimmune Related Diseases Association, AARDA. So that they are saying now that there's over 140 diseases that are in this. This autoimmune disease develops so that autoimmune diseases are such a major threat to us. They're a special threat to women. About 75% of the patients are women. And so that autoimmunity and women is something that is so, it often runs in families, and as I said before, 75% of these are women, but it can be African Americans, Hispanic, Native Americans. They all have an increased risk of developing an autoimmune disease. And that there's actually challenges in identifying this, so that we have Hashimoto's listed here, we have lupus, we have all these diseases, and the thing is, I wish to choose not to look at a disease, but rather look at the person. That's what you do. Look at that person as a whole being. Look at that person and think about where they're at. What are they going through in their life right now? How does that affect what is happening physically with them? So, in other words, what we want to do is, autoimmune disease is a major health problem, and so let's go on to showing, because we have anything from what was mentioned this morning about kidneys is so very important. I had the privilege of having a nurse work for me for 3 years. She came from Hawaii to back home to New Enterprise, Pennsylvania, and worked for me for 3 years and set us up on understanding how kidney failure can be assisted in maintaining some kidney function by making sure that person gets salt. In other words, understanding that salt, and she was actually responsible for changing all. She went back to Hawaii again, and now she is in charge of the largest dialysis in the world is in Hawaii. And it is correct that Pennsylvania is very, very high on the list of kidney failure. But what she learned is that these people who are on kidney dialysis, they actually lack good sodium. And so she got it at Bedford Hospital. She got them to change she set up their dialysis program at Bedford Hospital. And then she got them to change so that a spoon of salt was given to every person after their dialysis treatment. And how they could improve the outcome for these people because of using the salt. And now she went back to Hawaii, and they do 137 chairs, 3 shifts a day for dialysis in Hawaii. Now that's scary. And it's because, one of the things I think of is because of the processed meats and the like that those people eat. But salt, David Brownstein, you're all familiar with him. David Brownstein teaching you about salt. Something that I just learned, and maybe you already know about it, is have you ever eaten bamboo salt? Bamboo salt, because I've always thought of Celtic salt, Himalayan salt, real salt, and because they're rich in minerals. Well, this is bamboo salt, and it's also rich in minerals. I have not known about it before. But salt is something that David Brownstein learned firsthand because his father was someone who had a heart attack, came home from the hospital, was not responding the way he should have, and so his son finally said, I wonder if you just need some good salt. And that's exactly what. So he tells you in this little book called Salt Your Way to Health about adrenal disorders, high blood pressure. Yes, you want to stay away from the salt in the grocery store. It's kiln dried, K-I-L-N. It's dead. It lacks vitality. Salt that is something, this changes your cholesterol levels, fatigue, headaches, immune system, and thyroid disorders. Salt is something that is very, very beneficial. Okay. So the autoimmune disease certainly does have obstacles in diagnosis and treatment. And the sad part is that there's such a big segment of these people that are actually on disability because no one took the time to teach them that you need to change the way you eat. By the way, when you woke up this morning, what was the first thing that went through your mind? Was it a thank you of gratefulness for the bed you slept in? Was it a thank you for that you saw daylight out there, or maybe it wasn't daylight yet? Did you thank the universe, God, whoever you serve, as to where you were at that moment in time? Do you know that without gratefulness, you can actually affect your wellness? Did you know that how you think actually affects how the rest of the body works? There's a book that was a big change in my life years ago, David Hawkins, Power versus Force. I have all of his books. The Meaning of I, but David Hawkins was a man who was a psychiatrist who found out that there's power in words. When you allow negative words to come out of your mouth, you are now turning around and contributing to your cells. And when you say, I have XYZ disease, you want it? No, then don't say I have it. I'm not talking about denial. I'm talking about ways in which you can change. In here, he tells you how some of these words that you can say can actually make a difference in the healing ability of your body. It actually does make a big difference. So, autoimmune equals the disease process. An autoimmune disease is not a primary disease. It's a part of the disease process. The downstream immune response to systemic overload of tissue decay and degenerating organs. In other words, a primary disease is a disease that arises spontaneously, is not associated with or caused by a previous disease, injury, or event, but that may lead to a secondary disease. This is directly from the Farlex Medical Dictionary. But what we're saying is that these are things that don't just happen. These things there is a reason for what is going on. So what are the symptoms of an autoimmune disease? Because there's so many types of autoimmune disease, many of them can start out with that they're just tired. They don't have, you think that the adrenals, they didn't realize that the breakfast was the most important meal of the day and that they should have good protein. They didn't realize that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, many years ago, there was a dentist from Alabama who taught in the dental school there who said he would use his students as guinea pigs, and he'd show them that if they had a lull in their energy at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it had to do with their adrenal glands, but it also had to do that they didn't eat enough of protein in the morning when they got out of bed. Because protein is so important for us to get going, and good protein. You're very fortunate. You realize that, as I said, everybody enjoy your lunch today? Isn't it wonderful to have a company that practices what they preach? I think that's awesome, and I thank them. So that the most common organs and tissues that are affected are joints, muscles, skin, red blood cells, blood vessels, connective tissue, endocrine glands. Well, tell me, that's about every part of you. The following tests can be used to diagnose it. Well, since I don't diagnose disease, my big thing is to find out what is the imbalance in the body. How do you start your day? What's the most important thing that you do each day? I hope that it's drink water. Okay? Water is the most important part, and you should be having half your body weight converted to ounces for your amount of fluids for that day. Okay? You're not drinking large amounts at a time because that overloads the kidneys. You want to be drinking like 4 ounces at a time. You're not going to drink at mealtime. If you want to have a swallow, you can. But you want to. And I really affirm what Dr. Len said about coffee. How many of you are drinking Bulletproof Coffee? Bulletproof Coffee, awesome. Dave Ashby is the guy. You can go to Bulletproof Exec, E-X-E-C, bulletproofexec.com. This is a guy from Silicon Valley who increased his IQ by 12 points. By gosh, I'm listening when that happens. He increases, well, first of all, he found out that the coffee in this country is not accepted in Europe. Why? Because it has a mold residual that our government allows to happen. So his first thing was to get coffee that doesn't have that mold residual. Mold and fungus, remember, I didn't bring along, I always think of a book I didn't bring, but Cancer is a Fungus. Remember that book? because that is so important that you understand that this is so more prevalent. Candida is a fungus. Okay, all of this is something that we need to realize how we're going to get rid of. So what's Bulletproof Coffee for the rest of you who don't know? You go and take a cup of coffee. First of all, make it with good coffee. And then go and put a spoon of coconut oil, or if you don't like coconut oil, get MCT oil, and then put a spoon of butter in there. Raw butter would be the best. But anyway, you can, now he suggests that you put it in a blender and froth it up because it's like a latte. It's heavenly. Yes?
Heavy whipping cream.
Pardon?
Heavy whipping cream.
Heavy whipping cream would be wonderful. But my only problem is that we have heavy whipping cream at our office that we sell, and it is pasteurized, but it's not ultra pasteurized because I don't want ultra pasteurized, okay? But heavy whipping cream, you're right on. And you can, but the Kerry butter, for those of you who don't have access to raw, but I usually tell you, have you gone to WestonAPrice.org? Have you gone and found out who is your local representative for Weston A. Price? Who's your chapter leader in your area? And they're a volunteer, and that is their job to find you locally sourced food that is real food because you want it. Weston A. Price, Weston A. Price, Price. Remember, he was a dentist from not far from here. He was from Columbus, Ohio. Back in the 1930s, he was a dentist who was a dentist who saw such a change in the mouth of the human being because when we went through the Industrial Revolution, we started making things. Mom didn't make things anymore. We started having them in tin cans, cardboard boxes. That reminds me of the man yesterday. He said, "You mean I can't have tin cans of vegetables? What will I do?" I said, "You'll get real ones that haven't been cooked to death." My goodness. Because the thing is, we want to realize that these foods need to be living foods for us, and they need to be foods that we actually take into the body and utilize. Okay, so what we want to, so Bulletproof Coffee from now on. But anyway, so immune and autoimmune. The immune system is the body's defense, and so that against infectious organisms and other invaders. You know, we have so much, and I'm telling you about fungus, and you all certainly get online and you follow Doug Kaufman, I'm sure. Doug Kaufman is the guy who writes the Fungus Linked to Health Problems. Doug Kaufman has people tell me that he has a television show, and make sure that you are able to go and it's free. He has a magazine that comes online because this is so critical. Nature's Mold, the non-toxic solution to toxic mold. I am shocked how many people think that it doesn't matter that they have a damp basement and the dampness, that they can go down in the basement and smell the dampness. Oh, I run a dehumidifier. Fine, but that mold smell absolutely affects your body, and it certainly is. Surviving Mold was a book. Now this is not for a mighty person who doesn't want to read a little bit, because this is deep reading, but Richie Shoemaker, who's from Baltimore, Maryland, wrote this book on surviving mold, life in the era of dangerous buildings. I can't tell you how many people I've had that worked for our U.S. government that worked in government buildings that were absolutely mold-ridden. And they knew that the mold, and people think that, well, the mold comes in our bathroom around the window and I wash it away. Or I use Clorox. And I said, oh no, Clorox only bleaches the mold. Oh, well, we rent an apartment here, and our landlord came and painted the wall so the mold wouldn't show. And I said, no, that's not the way you get rid of mold. So that you need to be aware that these things are detrimental to you, very detrimental. Okay, origins of autoimmunity. Research from around the world has given us the scientific evidence to identify the cause of autoimmune. Simply put, it all starts with the inability of your body to break down dietary proteins because you lack pancreatic enzymes. I don't know of anything that is more of a key word than enzymes. We heard about it this morning from Dr. Len. It's so important. Dr. William Donald Kelly, when he did his last set of 4 days of lecturing at my office in New Enterprise in 2000, Dr. Kelly told us that we needed to have sufficient of pancreatic enzyme. Now you can use, if you want to stay and not use animal products, you can use a protease. There are proteases that are out there that are excellent. That's not a brand name, that's a name of an enzyme. So that are very beneficial. But pancreatic enzymes. I had a lady one time who, this was, gosh, back in the 70s, and you know, the more you learn, the more you find out you don't know. But I called Dr. Kelly to ask him what I should do with this lady because she was told that she had cancer of her liver. They had done a surgery. They opened her up and then closed her up and said that she probably had less than a month to live. And so this lady and her husband, somehow they heard of me, I don't know how, but anyway, they came and I said, Dr. Kelly, what on earth am I going to do? Because they're telling her that she's going to die. He said, you take her hand, and you take a bottle of pancreatic enzymes, and you pour them until none will fit on her hand. And that's how many I want you to have her take 4 times a day. She has to wake up at 3 a.m. because you know in acupuncture that's liver time. And you go and have her swallow these. I said, Dr. Kelly, what will happen to her? Nobody takes that many pills at once. He said, does she want to live or what? So I told this lady that I want her to go and take these enzymes. And I said, I can't say that I'm telling you this because I've asked someone who knows a whole lot more than I do. Well, anyway, just to give you the end of the story, 1 year later, she hiked to Pikes Peak. Okay, but anyway, but that is not needed by 99% of the people out there. So I don't wish to infer that, but I'm telling you that enzymes are absolutely critical because enzymes, that's how we go and get rid of inflammation. Doing such things as a C-reactive protein that I don't want to have higher than a 0.5, a homocysteine that I don't want higher than a 6. These things actually do matter. So you do use your blood chemistry. Use that blood chemistry, interpret it nutritionally, because then you're not diagnosing a disease for those of you who can't, but you'll actually find out how you can get the body to rebuild and to move on. So the last paragraph here says, as a result, your body will be deprived of the necessary nutrients in those proteins, and the incompletely digested protein and DNA fragments will enter the bloodstream and trigger immune response. I don't know of a faster way. Somebody who says that they can't, now they don't take these proteolytic, that's what they're called, proteolytic enzymes, Proteolytic. Proteolytic enzymes you take between meals. These are not your digestive enzymes. Dr. Len was talking about digestive enzymes, and they are very important. And enzymes is probably what I would say is the key to most every kind of breakdown in the body. Because if you it's like putting the right key in the keyhole. You have actually used the enzymes then to start all your nutrition to get the body to working better. So that someone who has a lot of pain and inflammation, now you absolutely are changing their diet. They're starting out with water. I already told you water. Number 2 is the food that you eat. We're going to go into more of that after a while. But then number 3 is exercise. I already told you you're not going to just stay sitting. And number 4 then is mind-body. Mind-body is something that is so very, very important. Okay. Are autoimmune diseases multiple singularly occurring diseases that happen to be in the same person? Is it possible that the cause could be the same in these multiple conditions and that we just about haven't figured out yet by naming it what it is? It often shows up in multiple forms in one person, and that is true. So that proteolytic enzymes, giving them to a person when they wake up in the morning, giving them to them when they go to bed at night, when the stomach is empty, you will see amazing results. Now, if you happen to give too many to the person who's constipated, their bowels will start moving. Isn't that interesting? You know that your bowels should be moving 3 times a day for every meal that you eat. You know that you should have a stool that doesn't have a strong odor, that you have to put the candles on. I hope you don't do that in your house. But anyway, to get rid of the odor. You know that your stool should be at least dark brown. It should be 16 to 18 inches long without having to get out your tape measure. And you always use a stool in front of the toilet to put your feet up on because we function best in a squatting position. Now, my son was in Iraq and quickly told me the holes in the floor that you squat over in order to get rid of your bowel movement. But we here can use a stool in front of the toilet, put your feet up on it, and you'll actually find out that the body will function so much better. Many a hunter has told me that, how is it, Ella, that when I go hunting, I am able to go better to the bathroom behind a tree than what I can at any other time? I said, that's easy to understand. The body works more naturally that way, okay? So you have, it's very important that, so how this elimination system does work and how it's able to function. So how do we stay healthy? Okay, digestion seems to be one of these keys. Food is fuel. Is your body, the engine, compatible with the types of foods or proteins you're filling it with? Are you using unleaded fuel in a diesel tank? Think, triad of digestion. Protein digestion, fat digestion, carbohydrate digestion. All start with digesting proteins. How important are proteins? Both dietary proteins consumed in the form of eggs, fish, beef, etc., and body proteins, factors in blood and tissues, requires enzymes to be broken down properly by the body. Every animal, including humans, must have an adequate source of protein in order to grow and maintain itself. Proteins yield amino acids, which are the fundamental structural elements of every cell in the body. And then there's two major types of amino acids, essential and non-essential. The non-essential are produced by our bodies, and the essential ones must be supplied by our food. And so we have numerous essential enzymes, you know them all by heart. Protein comes from the Greek derivation meaning of first importance. Of first importance? Wow. You realize how lucky you are that you have a company here that has whey protein that comes from New Zealand that is pure? Do you realize, have you listened to the news lately about pulling things off of shelves and actually finding out that it didn't have in it what it said? Are you surprised? No. But you need to know, and this is what you need to teach your clients, patients about, is quality. What is quality? Is there a difference? There is a difference. And teach them that so that they are absolutely adhered to the program that you set up for them. That's very important. So, also bound within the dietary proteins we consume, you have all these types of things, but now we're going to talk about something called vitamin B12, also called cobalamin. Animal protein is the only dietary source of B12. How important is it? It is so important. And this is, and also what, to affirm what Dr. Len said earlier, we do a 23andMe test, which is a saliva test. You can do this, you can go to 23andme.com, but you can get an account as a professional, and you can do the saliva test, and then you're finding out what is the genetic variant and the genetic defect in that person. Because we have changed. In the past 40 years, our bodies have absolutely changed from what we were 40 years ago. Our DNA has actually changed. Last October, I decided I would go back to school. I go to Bentley University up near Boston every other month for Friday through Monday, and what we are studying is homeopathy. Because I'm learning now that there's another way, because our DNA has so changed, we actually are using different potencies of homeopathic remedies than what I used 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Because the homeopathic remedies, I can't go into some of the deep remedies, the 1Ms, the 10M remedy the way I was taught. Dr. George Vidholkas is my idol, if you can have such a thing, as a homeopath. He's from Greece. Dr. George Vidholkas said that our world has changed so much that we need to go with that change. And now we actually need some of the raw material because people's systems are so messed up, if we can use that term, and that we actually need to find out what it is that we need to correct the body. So it takes many types of things. B12 is something, pancreatic enzymes are essential for the transport and absorption of vitamin B12. B12 is low, then you see homocysteine rising. And you know that homocysteine is a marker for cardiovascular issues. You also know that in the US, the limits of B12. When my parents were alive, Dr. Ralph Miranda is our medical director for my office. And I asked him, Dr. Miranda, would you please allow me to give my parents a B12 shot every week? And his first reaction was, Ella. And I said, please. I said, I read that this B12 shot would actually help their mind to function so much better. And that proved true. That proved so true. Because their mind works so much better. And now I would say, no, you don't need a B12 shot. I would say, now find out about those methyl donors and find out why the body would not be able to handle it. Okay, so you want to know why it is that the person is not absorbing it. No amount of B12 will reverse the symptoms of autoimmune disease associated with a B12 deficiency unless the mechanism your body has to absorb is restored. The problem lies in the metabolism of B12, not just in the amount consumed. Proteases, pancreatic enzymes that digest proteins, are responsible for releasing B12 from dietary protein and for proper absorption of B12. If protease is not available, then no matter how much protein-bound vitamin B12 we consume, we will be unable to properly metabolize the B12. The following study concludes that these pancreatic enzymes are essential for the transport of and absorption of vitamin B12. B12 malabsorption study, this was done, I don't remember, in 1980. So cobalamin malabsorption due to non-degradation of the R proteins in the human intestine. But we are learning so much now about B12 and how these enzymes are so needed for us to be able to see. When Dr. Kelly was at our office in 2000, we were still, not so much then, probably it was during the 90s, because when I was taught about nutrition, I was taught that if you took 4 pills, probably 6 was better, so I took them. But now we realize that it's not so much in having the high amounts, but rather having the right thing for that right person. Because each person that you see is an individual, and finding out what each person needs makes all the difference in the world. It really does. So digestive enzymes are enzymes that break down all of these things in the body, and they're found in the digestive tracts of animals. They aid in the digestion of food as well as the inside the cells. And these also, they are diverse and are found in the saliva secreted by the salivary glands. You know that digestion begins in your mouth. That's why you never want to be grabbing a bite and running, because you know that you need to chew your food. Chew, chew, chew your food. You remember that song years ago? Chew, chew, chew your food gaily through the meal. The more you laugh, the less you eat, the better you will feel. Well, this is so important that we would learn to know to chew our food more, because it is very relevant. So, are classified based on their target substrates. Proteases and peptidases split proteins into small peptides and amino acids. In other words, amylases. These are all things that you can see. They can teach you, Jamie and his crew can teach you all about the different nucleases, the lipases. All of these enzymes are so very critical in how they are used in the body, and how Dr. Weiner has been doing this kind of thing for many, many years, and learning to, and not just learning, but doing these, using these enzymes and how they can be used to help the body. DNase 1, found mostly in the pancreas where it is produced. By the way, the pancreas, what organ in the body goes with what emotion? What does your pancreas go with? Why are we seeing so much of diabetes? Oh yes, it has to do with eating too much carbs and that type of thing. Of course it does. But what else does it have to do emotionally?
Bitterness, sadness.
Bitterness, sadness, unhappy with your life. Ask the person, are you really happy with your life? Oh, no. Well, why not? Oh, because all these bad things have happened. But I said, unless you find an island in that thought where you can say, I'm okay, your body has a real difficult time to heal. A very difficult time. So that the liver, your liver, the emotion that goes with it, anger, irritation, upset. Because the liver is telling you about, so that your liver is your filter, it's your antihistamine producer. You didn't need to go to the store for Benadryl. Your liver will do the job if it's working right. Milk thistle, silymarin, that's the botanical name for milk thistle, is something that you need for the liver. It's something that's very beneficial to your liver. Anyway, this DNase, one, is mainly responsible for the digestion of dietary DNA before it can be absorbed into the body. The missing enzyme would result in incompletely digesting DNA entering the bloodstream. This would elicit the same immune response that would normally occur during an infection. What are you doing around your house to go and make sure that people don't get flu in your house? Do you have any onions in the kitchen? Then you know what you do. You take the onion, you cut it in half, you lay it on a plate with the open ends up, put it in the bedroom at night when you sleep. In the morning when you wake up, the onion will be black. Throw it away. But it absorbed all the viruses in the room and got rid of it. So an onion is your friend. If you have a cough and a cold and you want to know how in the world you're going to get rid of that, you think about making a cough syrup. No, you don't need to run to the drugstore. Sorry, Dr. Len. But you go and take some onions and peel the onion, cut it in you can cut it any way you like, but put it in a glass dish and then put it in the oven and bake it. When you get it out of the oven, drizzle honey across the top and have a spoon of that for a cough syrup. It works wonders. And it doesn't have a bad taste because the onions are cooked, and so that kids will even love it. But it works. And of course you can make onion poultices for on the chest, you know. Okay, so correlation with lupus. Yes, there is correlation with all kinds of NETs, the neutrophils, extracellular traps that ensnare and destroy pathogens. This is what happens during infection. Do you know that we do because we're a state licensed lab, we do a automatic urinalysis on everybody that we see. I would like to wager that I'll bet that there are more than 2/3 of the people today walking around with some low-grade infection that they don't know that they have. I really believe that. But what do you do for an infection? So first of all, you start working with what they might take, some vitamin C, make sure that they're using their fermented cod liver oil, make sure that they're getting their is their vitamin D level up. Remember the research that was done, gosh, now 7 years ago easily, at UCLA. John Cannell, Cannell, he lectured, in fact, here in Pittsburgh at the Pennsylvania Natural Living Association. That might be 8 years ago or about. But anyway, John Cannell has vitamin D council.org, and he's from California. He was originally from Pittsburgh. And Dr. Cannell did the research at UCLA, or excuse me, he wrote about the research at UCLA. They found out that if they did vitamin D, now at UCLA they did vitamin D 200,000 units a day for 3 days and found out that it worked better than an antibiotic. I have never used more than 100,000 units a day for 3 days, and I've always seen it to get rid of an infection. Vitamin D is absolutely critical that we have sufficient in the body. Very, very important. And please, you want vitamin D3, not D2, and you also want it from a food source, and that's fermented cod liver oil. Fermented cod liver oil, buying cod liver oil that's been processed so it has a good taste, is full of baloney. Don't bother with it. Throw it away. Get fermented cod liver oil so that you can get the medicinal value of it, so you can get the good out of it.